Exercise 1Z, Basic Transformations Review. I recommend you do this exercise alone to test the skills you've learnt in this chapter. The estimated time is about 15 minutes. First, create another CSV query to fetch the data for exercise 1Z. It looks like this. You'll need to perform some basic transformations to transform that data into something like this. Notice that this time, instead of keeping those monthly columns, we've actually only kept the quarterly subtotals. So have a think about how you might do this, as well as unpivoting those date columns, fixing those grouped headers, pivoting those metric columns into their own columns, and removing those header rows. You'll also notice that at the bottom of the dataset there's a couple of footer rows which you may have to filter out from the dataset. In addition, there are a few clues in the next video to help you with those steps if you need them, but I do recommend you have a go without. This video provides 3 clues that might help you with exercise 1Z. Clue number 1. You may need to keep errors instead of removing them. Clue number 2. You'll need to add an extra column as we did in the previous exercise. Clue number 3. You may need to manually filter a column or 2. Let's quickly review those steps needed to complete exercise 1Z. Add a new query to retrieve CSV file 1Z. Keep the comma delimiter and press OK. Remove that column reference in the formula bar. Remove 8 header rows, and then promote the real headers to headers. Delete the ref1 and ref2 columns, and now replace the values in the metric column. So to do this, we're going to replace blank text with null. Now we can fill down those values to show sales and margin. We want to unpivot these dates, so select the other 3 columns, go to Unpivot Other Columns. Rename the attribute column to Date. Pivot the metric column using the values column and do not aggregate. Now we show a column for sales and margin. Duplicate the date column, making sure that you've clicked on it. Duplicate. Pass the original date column using not the new columns function but the transform function. Date pass. And this time we're going to keep the errors. So with the date column selected, instead of going to remove rows, remove errors, we use keep rows, keep errors. Now delete that date column. Let's filter out 2017 and 2018 from this quarter column. And finally, remember that at the bottom of this dataset, we actually have a few additional rows of footer data that are actually empty. Let's make sure the store column is filtered to remove those, X, Y, and XZ. Rename the date copy column to quarter. And finally, all we need to do is to set the column types. So quarter is text, margin and sales are decimal numbers, and category and store are whole numbers. Now we're ready to load that data. Just rename the exercise as Chapter Review. Close and load 2. We'll pick only create connection. OK. And just make sure you save your file there so that you don't lose the progress you've made.
These Power Query challenges are a great way to test your knowledge of this incredible tool. To learn more tips and tricks that save you hours of time, check out our Power Query Fundamentals course, where you can learn all the most widely used functionality using applied, real-world examples.